It's a privilege to be with you today. What is burning in my soul is Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. You can turn with me to Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, and it reads as follows. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. One of the greatest schemes and lies that plagues the church today is that young people should wait until another day. That they should wait until another day to serve the Lord. That they should wait perhaps another decade to serve the Lord. That they should wait until another opportunity to serve the Lord. But that is indeed a scheme, and it's a lie, and it's a deceitful scheme that plagues the church, unfortunately. It's been nearly 300 years since Jonathan Edwards ministered in New England. If you think about the ministry of Jonathan Edwards and you think about what he did and how he served, it is an astounding ministry. He is considered to be one of the most eminent preachers to ever come from the United States history. He preached the most famous sermon in the history of America, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. Many scholars and theologians have spent their lives studying Edwards' resolutions. It's a list of 70 statements of commitment, personal commitment to God. Statements like this. Number 7, resolved never to do anything which I should be afraid to do if it were the last hour of my life. Number 56, resolved never to give over, nor in the least to slacken my fight with my corruptions, however unsuccessful it may be. Number 41, resolved to ask myself at the end of every day, week, month, and year wherein I could possibly, in any respect, have done better. Number 28, resolved to study the Scriptures so steadily, constantly, and frequently as that I may find and plainly perceive myself to grow in the knowledge of the same. The interesting thing about Jonathan Edwards' resolutions and that entire list is that when he penned those resolutions, he wasn't 65 years of age. He wasn't 70 years of age. He did not write the resolutions on his deathbed. He was 18 years of age when he started to write down this wonderful list that we love and that we still read and learn from today. When you survey church history, you find that George Whitefield was 22 when he preached to tens of thousands of people in an open-air field, turning the world upside down with the gospel. Martin Luther stood against the false teaching of the Roman Catholic Church before he was 30. William Carey turned the world upside down with the gospel as a young man, believing that he should expect great things from God, so he would attempt great things for God. Adoniram Judson went to Burma and he reached people with the gospel as a young pastor. His wife, Ann Judson, got on a boat and said goodbye to her family, and she was 23 years of age. Jim Elliot would go as a young man determined to reach the unconverted Indians in Ecuador and give his life for that cause. Susanna Spurgeon married Charles before she was 24 years of age and committed herself to faithfully serving Christ. You see, on and on and on again we go throughout the hallways of church history, and we see that there were many people who refused to buy that lie that says you have to wait another decade before you can serve God faithfully. So hear me today, all of you young people who are in this room, and pastors who are pastoring the young people, and parents who are shepherding the young people and trying to encourage them. We need to disciple the young people in this room and those in our churches to run the race of faith with endurance for the glory of King Jesus. In other words, we need to refuse to believe this lie that young people need to wait until another day. There's some necessary preparation. If you just listen to this text, lay aside every weight and sin. You have to be able to determine the difference between weight and sin. There are some really, really good things that God would give you that could hinder you at an early age. You have to use wisdom, measured wisdom, to be able to evaluate and say, is this okay? If it's not sin, should I then decide to use this or not use this? You have to be able to balance these things out. Sometimes technology can rob you of your time. Sometimes relationships that are unnecessary, that are just mere recreational relationships, and I'm talking about dating relationships, could be an unnecessary burden for you or even dangerous for you. You need to think in terms of material things that could hinder your progress in the faith, and then obviously lay aside every sin. And the text says that it clings so closely to us. If you think about running a race, it goes without saying that you wouldn't want to toe the line for a race with an overcoat on or a suit to run a race. And in this culture, in this context, in an ancient primitive setting, they would have taken off their overcoat, they would have laid it aside, and they would have pulled up their robe, and they would have tied it with a belt or a rope of some sort. They would gird up their loins, and they would be prepared to run so that they could run with endurance, so that they would not have any distractions that would hold them back. This is necessary preparation. And every young person in this room needs to think in those categories to prepare yourself for the race that is set before you so that you can run, listen to this, with necessary determination. And let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. Endurance. It is the capacity to hold out or to bear up in the face of difficulty. It means fortitude. It means perseverance. In other words, the writer to the Hebrews is pointing out the obvious, right? Is that the Christian life is not a sprint. The Christian life is a marathon. The Christian life is an endurance race that we must run with patience and yet with endurance. But far too often, people approach the Christian life as if it's a sprint, and that's not the way that the Christian life works. Years ago, I got involved in distance running. I ran in high school, I ran in college, and then I ended up going beyond that to run marathons and ultra marathons, going up to the 50-mile distance through trails and mountains. And my dad ran another race. He went beyond my distance to the 100-mile distance, and there's this prestigious race in California, and it's called the Western States Ultra Marathon. It's 100 miles through really rugged terrain. The interesting story about and the history of this prestigious race is that years ago in the 1970s, it started out as a horse race. It was a horse race, an endurance race that riders would compete in to show that you can ride a horse over really rugged terrain 100 miles in 24 hours. There was a specific man named Gordy Ainsley, and he rode that race in 71 and 72. And in 1973, in preparation for the race, his horse suffered an injury. And he was so determined, looking forward to that race, that when the race happened, he showed up without a horse. He stepped up to the line, and they said, "Gordy, what are you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm just going to run the race." And he set out on the course on foot, and he did the unthinkable. And 23 hours and 42 minutes later, Gordy finished the race. He would later tell the story. And in fact, I've seen a video interview of him as an old man now looking back, and this big gray beard sitting there. And he said, I couldn't finish the race. I came to the point where I was so fatigued, I was so hurt, I was so beat up that I just knew I couldn't finish the race. So I just determined that I was going to take one more step. And then I just determined I was going to continue to take one more step until I couldn't take another step. And when I heard that interview and thought about the parallel to Hebrews chapter 12, I thought, what a wonderful, wonderful illustration. Because you see, what the young people in our churches need to hear from some older men and older women is they need to hear stories about the difficult hills and the dark valleys and the immense pain that could face you in the Christian life. That's what the young people need to hear. And then they need to be encouraged to take just one more step, to refuse to give up, to refuse to quit, to not throw in the white towel, to run with endurance the race of the Christian life. And what is the aim? The aim is verse 2, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. I can just imagine George Whitefield, someone saying, George, just wait until another day. You're just 22. Martin Luther, you can wait until another day, maybe another decade. You're just 30. Adoniram Judson, you can wait until another time, maybe later in life. Don't you realize how dangerous it's going to be? Maybe, Anne, you should reconsider. Tap the brakes a bit. Wait until another decade or two. You're just 23. Susanna Spurgeon, wait, you're not yet 24. You don't have to do all of this right now. You can just wait. William Carey, wait until another day to attempt great things for God. Jonathan Edwards, you're just 18. So, dear young person in this room, I want to encourage you that whatever you do in life, that you run the race with endurance, looking to Jesus, who is indeed the founder and perfecter of your faith, who for the joy that was placed before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated presently at the right hand of the throne of God. Whatever you do, don't buy in to this lie, this scheme that says you have to wait until another day. So, don't slow down. Don't give up. Don't throw in the white towel. Get moving today, because you're not promised tomorrow. You don't know what a day may bring. So be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that in the Lord your labor is not in vain. May God bless you.